Hello everyone, and welcome to today's presentation on the state of the legal profession in 2018. My name is Richard Jacobs. I'm the founder of Speakeasy Marketing Incorporated. I'm an attorney marketing specialist. That's what I've chosen to focus all my effort on for the past 9 years. I'm actually considered by some to be America's #1 authority on legal marketing for small law firms. I've authored and co-authored several books. So I have The Secrets of Attorney Marketing, Law School Dares Not Teach, The Attorney Authority Reboot, and several other titles that are on Amazon and Kindle. I've spoken at several attorney meetup events, so NACDL, which is the National Association for Criminal Defense Lawyers, if you don't know, PILMA, Personal Injury and Disability Attorneys. I've spoken at several meetups, in New York, Las Vegas, different places. And I've worked with over 600 attorneys in this time in 17 different practice areas. So I've worked in DUI, criminal defense, personal injury, workman's comp, 17 different practice areas, so a whole bunch. And I've helped a lot of clients, a lot of attorneys attract better clients, higher paying clients, and get out of that frustration of being bid down on their fees and having to chase people to get retainers. That's been my goal. I built a nationwide DUI lead generation site. We provided almost 35,000 DUI leads to attorneys over the past 9 years. The site was sold to investors a number of years ago, but that's kind of how I got started in this business. So I want to get into the real reason that we're here today. Why have you spent the time and effort to come? It's that solo attorneys and small law firms all across the country, they're having a problem. They're having a problem attract high-paying clients that will pay reasonable retainer fees. They're getting bid down because there's several reasons I'll go into, but there's a glut of new attorneys. The internet is changing how people view attorneys and how they can compare them. So we're going to go into the major reasons why this is occurring. And I'm going to be sharing with you changes and trends in the legal profession that are going to be really profound for lawyers this year. So we're going to go for about 40 minutes, and I'm going to be going over various developments, like I said, in the legal industry. Some of these are not going to be comfortable, but it's the truth about what's going on. That's why you're here. You're not here to just hear some facade of what may be. You're here to get useful information that will help you in your law practice. That's the goal here. So I think you're going to find these ideas empowering and eye-opening, even though, like I said, you may not like to hear them right at first. So before we get started, I just want to give you a quick overview of what we're going to cover in the presentation. So first, we're going to look at 3 major changes that have happened to the legal industry in the past few years and how they've really turned the legal profession on its head. They've changed the game for lawyers. It's hard now for attorneys to get the kind of living they deserve, the kind of fees they were used to commanding and the respect that they used to have. Second, I'm going to show you actually why the legal profession has kind of become like Tinder, the dating app. I don't know if anyone here has used Tinder. Show of hands. If you've seen the app or if you've heard about it or maybe even used it, you don't have to say, but the legal profession unfortunately has kind of become like that, choosing lawyers, swiping left and right. I like this one, I don't like that one. We're also going to look at one vital piece of the puzzle that's missing from most attorneys' marketing and why this missing component is really the key element that will help you attract better clients that will pay you more money, pay the fees that you deserve, and get you back into that spot that attorneys used to be in. Then I'm going to recommend some action steps for you guys to follow. I'm going to have some resources at the end. I don't want you to worry, this is not a sales pitch. There's nothing to be sold to you, but I'm going to have some useful items for you at the end that you can use to help you in your practice. The nice thing today is I see a few familiar faces in the audience. So how many of you guys or gals have followed my work for a number of years? Maybe you've owned one of my books. You've gotten my newsletters, maybe a show of hands? Okay, several of you, that's great, excellent. Okay, so what I'm going to go through is the typical stages and the ways that attorneys attract clients. So here's what will happen, and this will be very familiar to you. So potentials, that's what we call, as you know, potential clients. Potentials will either call you, they'll fill out a form on your website, they may do live chat, and then your admin or secretary will talk to the person, maybe gather some info, and say, all right, I'll send you to the attorney. And they'll get on the phone with you. You'll do your initial consult. You give them the dog and pony show, hear about their situation. And then one of two things will happen. You'll either quote them fees over the phone, and this is the point where most attorneys go, because they worry about being told, oh, that's too much, or I spoke to another attorney and he'll do it for half of that, that kind of thing. A lot of attorneys try to get potentials into the office for a consultation. They think if I could just get them in that office, I'm going to close them. That's the way a lot of attorneys work nowadays. Some of them, again, will try to do it by phone. But it's at the point where the fees are presented is where everything gets tense, because there's so much problems with fee shopping and commanding these fees you need today. So at this point, even if you get the potential client to say, yeah, I'll come into the office Tuesday morning at 3, Tuesday morning at 11, a lot of times they'll no-show. I speak to a lot of attorneys that have no-show rates of 30%, 50%, sometimes 70%. And that's terrible. You're sitting there in the office, billable hours are going by, person no-shows. Now you got to start all over again. If they do come into the office, again, you do your presentation. Now it comes to the end of the presentation, you got to present those fees again. And you may hear, well, I got to think about it, I got to talk to my wife, I can't afford that. Again, another attorney, surprise, surprise, says they do it for half the price. So these are huge problems that, again, cause another loss of clients at that point. And by that point, you've invested a lot of time and energy and your knowledge in talking to this person, only to have them say, thanks. So what do you do at that point? Well, most firms don't even follow up. And the ones that do feel degraded by it. You call the client, you have your secretary call them, maybe you send them mail, you ask them, hey, are you ready to start the case, et cetera. You may tell them, hey, we're running out of time. You only have 3 days to respond. You got to get back to me. And a lot of the potentials is, at this point, they go ghost, I call it. They just stop answering the phone. So this is the way most law firms go about getting clients, in my experience. Show of hands, how many of you guys or gals, this is how your sequence tends to go. This is how you work on getting clients. Yeah, it's almost everybody. Almost everybody, this is how it is. So something you've noticed these past few years, and I've heard anecdotally, is that we're all losing a lot of clients in these transitions. The phone, you'll get 50 calls in the month, and half of them you'll lose at that point. Then you try to do the initial consultation or get them in the office, you'll lose another half. Then in the office, again, they'll complain about fees. They'll say, let me think about it. You'll lose even more. So what started out as maybe tons of calls and all this marketing you poured into it shrivels down to just a few clients a month. And it's keeping you maybe at just paying the bills, not succeeding, not thriving. And the cases that you do have, you're doing it for barely any profit, maybe even at a loss in certain cases. So this is the state of the industry, unfortunately. Okay, so what's changed in the process of trying to attract clients and get fees? The big thing is respect. It's missing in this process. Potentials they just don't have the kind of respect for attorneys that they should have and that they used to have. It's just a bitter pill of truth that is the reality of legal marketing in 2018. That's just how it is. It's something you have to face up to. We all have to face up to that if we're going to thrive and capitalize on this and move forward for 2018 and beyond. That's what's got to be done. The key challenge is to put respect back into the process. So how do we do that? That's what I'm going to go into now. The reason to put respect back in is it actually creates value for everybody. If potentials respect you, they're more likely to listen to you, follow your advice, and the case will go better. If they don't respect you, they get to challenge everything you say, even though that you're the one that has 30 years experience. Who wants a client like that? Nobody. At best, you may get your fees, but the client will resent you. So respect has to be there in order for this process to work. It's just a critical thing. So the million-dollar question is, what has changed? Why has respect gone away over the past few years, especially recently? Why has it become so challenging to attract clients and to retain them and to get the fees that you used to get? How do you get back to those fee levels again? So we're going to go through a little bit of a history, and then we're going to get to the state of what's going on right now. So in the good old days, towns and cities would have a couple lawyers in a given practice area, a couple accident attorneys, a couple of divorce lawyers, et cetera. A new attorney comes in, they'd have to apprentice under other lawyers. They'd have to pay their dues and do cases and do the background legal work for a number of years. It would take time for them to get to know the community to know them as the attorney in their area, and to build up that respect and that community involvement. That took years of time. They'd have to pay their dues like you guys did, being in the profession for so long. Once they pay their dues, they hang out their own shingle, and now they'd have their own firm. But again, this is after apprenticing for a number of years. And in the towns and cities they were in, if someone got in trouble, they would ask their father, their mother, their priest, people at work, hey, my wife wants to divorce me, who do you recommend? Or, I was in an accident, what do I do? Or, I was arrested for DUI, what do I do? Do you know someone I can call? So it was all referral based and word of mouth based, which you guys know. And a lot of attorneys still claim that that's how they get most of their business. It was, this is the process. So what has changed in the past few years to break this process, to break the referral process? Well, there's three things. One is the internet. Amazing invention, probably one of the greatest inventions of humanity, but every innovation leads to disruption, and the internet is a big example of that. So it's lowered the barrier to entry. Yes, you still have to be a lawyer to practice law, thank goodness, but to have a website, to have a presence on the internet, it's not really that hard. You may not have to pay tens of thousands for billboards or bus stop signs. You may not have to have a big building. Some lawyers even practice from their homes, as some of you may do. Nothing wrong with that. But the barrier to entry has come way down. That's what the internet has done. It's created a level playing field. So even new attorneys that have been around for 6 months or a year, they can have a great looking website. They can have presence on social media. They can look just like the firms that have been out there for 30 years. And it's diminished attorneys' referral networks. They've been diminished in general. So back in the day, again, like my example, when John Smith got a recommendation for an attorney, there weren't hundreds to pick from. And again, it was a respected referral from, again, priest, coworker, et cetera. The person didn't just pull out their phone and start Googling attorneys, but the internet has allowed them to do that. Now, again, I've got my notes here on the smartphone. I can Google attorneys while I talk to you if I want to. It's crazy, So more often than not, if you had a good reputation, if you had a good referral network, you wouldn't have to compete for clients. You wouldn't have to fight to the death to get them. Now, though, potential clients often don't ask a friend or coworker. They'll ask Google. They'll just go to the internet, and that's what the internet has become. It's the go-to place for people to get advice over friends, over family many times, which is crazy. And when someone does search for Google for an attorney, it's not just one or two attorneys there. There's dozens, hundreds within seconds. They can pull up, they can look at reviews, they can compare them side by side like, two apples and an apple cart in the market. It's very, very easy to do that. And that's what the internet has done to the profession. Another problem is there's an overabundance of junior attorneys. I don't know if you've seen stats, but law schools are cranking out attorneys like crazy. So there was actually a joke. They said in X number of years, there'll be enough attorneys where everyone in the US will be an attorney. There's so many being made if it continues at the current pace. This is a problem whenever there's oversupply. You know about markets. Oversupply pushes down prices. So there's tons and tons of competition. I know lawyers that'll command $4,000 for a DUI, but they'll have people advertising for $750 for a DUI. A lot of these are junior attorneys that just want experience. They don't even understand you're not going to make money at those levels. They put these ridiculous prices out, sometimes to lure people in, and that's not the real price. They may put out these prices and barely do any representation when you would do a much better job. Let's say you'd have expert witnesses at that price. You'd go to court 7-8 times at that price. You'd really mount a solid defense. The client doesn't know this. They just say, oh, $750, $4,000. I'm going to go with this guy that charged me $750. He's promising me that he can help and seems to say all the same stuff you did. He went to law school, you went to law school. He's had X number of experience. So these comparisons are not fair in the prospect's mind, but they're happening. And they have no clue what goes into a defense of, again, $750 versus $4,000. Think of all the things you can do. Think of 3 scenarios. If a client paid you $10,000 to defend their DUI, for instance, what could you do? How much could you do to marshal a defense for them? If they paid you $4,000, what could you do? If they paid you $1,000, what could you do? Barely anything. But this is what's happening in the market, and again, potentials don't see this side of it. They just see the dollar amount. And that really hurts a lot of attorneys out there. All right, the third phenomena that is causing a problem, it goes with the internet, but it's smartphones and instant gratification. So people literally have everything at their fingertips right now. You know, I could order pizza while I'm speaking and it would come in the door, you know, using my phone. You don't even have to get out of bed for a lot of things you want. I have a garage full of Amazon boxes. You guys probably do too. You know, my wife orders every day from Amazon, unfortunately. So this has hurt the legal market as well because people don't have patience, they don't want to wait. They can Google, like I said, a whole bunch of attorneys. If you don't answer the phone first shot, that's cool, I'll just go to the next one. If your secretary or admin isn't friendly to a potential that calls, goodbye, hang up, I'll just call the next one. So this has caused a huge problem. There's no patience, there's no waiting. It's forced attorneys to scramble and jump on calls if they want that business. And that's bad positioning. So we got to fix that. So the result of these three forces is created what I call the Tinder economy. That's my example. Again, the good old days, you know, to go along with the Tinder analogy, is you'd meet a guy or a girl, you'd go out on dates, and it would be something special. Now, people just pull out an iPhone, they look hot, not, swipe left, swipe right, and that's the end of them. There's no consideration, no nothing. Going with the Tinder example, you know, a friend of mine told me about this, a younger friend. He said, you know what happens when you message someone on an app like this? You know, the girl may have like all these demands and requirements, and if you don't meet them, they just block you and they move on to the next person. So the person you're contacting has the power because they have the choice. They have this vast amount of choice. And what happens if you have high esteem and you don't want to play these games? You don't want to have people just demean you and say, well, if you could do this, I'll talk to you. If not, you know, get out of here. Well, then you'll probably won't get the client. So what do you do? How do you get around this? As you know, Google and Avvo have done this to lawyers. They have them stacked up side by side. They have their credentials side by side. People can go on these apps, search for a practice area, compare 12 attorneys in a second, and pick one that they want to call. And you probably wouldn't be surprised that potential clients find these platforms or know about them. They're all over Google. A lot of people in the industry know about Avvo, or they find Avvo, they run into it. So these platforms are actually in the way of clients getting to you. It's a big problem.